Well, hello, Alicia. Welcome, everyone else, to the Canadian Immigration Live Q&A. This is the Mark and Alicia version. I should say Alicia Mark version. I am the facilitator here, but Alicia is the source of all knowledge, goodness related to Canadian immigration. So welcome, everybody. As if this is your first time watching, this is an opportunity for you to get your immigration questions answered live. So all you need to do, whether you're tuning in on the Canadian Immigration Institute's YouTube channel or Facebook or Twitter or even LinkedIn, if you're connected in, it's great to have you all watching. And for those listening on the Canadian Immigration Podcast as a recording, we're happy to have you here with us as well. So what's new, Alicia?
What's new? Consults, working on LMIAs, getting applications filed for people for study permits, express entry. People are getting ready for express entry. So everybody's gearing up for that so that they're ready for the draws when they start up in July this year.
And I hinted a little bit in my live Q&A yesterday that we are going to be putting together, and I'm not sure if I told you about this, Alicia, but we're going to be putting together a series, a playlist on that slowly unfolds and unveils the things that you need to start doing now so that you're ready in July. And so watch on the YouTube channel, and we will be releasing these short little segments to help you make sure that you're prepared and that you are not missing out on this opportunity once it finally resurfaces. So that is awesome. So we've got lots of people connecting in here, and it's like sunny Toronto. I'm happy to hear, Manasi, that Toronto was sunny. How's the weather there, Alicia? I always have to pull up my app here and see.
Calgary's beautiful right now. It's nice and sunny. It's not too windy out there. So yeah, no complaints. The robins are out and not any green grass yet, but I can see the very tips of my tulips starting to pop up. So
they're wanting to come through. That's awesome. I know it's so nice when finally we get summer, and it's so short. We gotta, as we say here, we gotta make hay while the sun shines here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Fox here says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, Bree here for Hallie. What's on the agenda for today?" And love and light. Awesome. That's great. Yes. So today, what we're going to talk about, well, really, like we said before, there isn't a ton that has changed with express entry. We know that yesterday, in accordance with their regular schedule, there was another draw, and there were 829 invitations issued, and the lowest score was 772. And it was provincial nominee program only. So at least we have a little bit more certainty, don't we, Alicia?
Yeah. Yeah, the provincial nominee program has been fairly steady. I guess it's the only thing that's been steady throughout the pandemic is that they have continued to invite people through the provincial nominee draws. And yeah, I'm helping somebody right now with an Alberta Express Entry PNP application. They keep chugging along. So
Yep. And then come July, we're hoping that we're going to see some rounds of invitations. And, you know, we attempted to speculate a few live streams ago, but I think that the first one's probably going to be no program specified. You know, the minister hinted that it was FSW is what would be, you know, that they would be extending from outside Canada, essentially, or those that are qualified or eligible under the federal skilled worker program. And it wouldn't surprise me if that first one was a no program specified, because they don't do just FSW. It's like open season for everybody or tailored to CEC. And, you know, why do they, before this round of PNP onlys, why did they not do more PNPs? Well, because if it's no program specified, all the PNPs are still going to get drawn, because, you know, they're, like we can see here, they're almost always going to be over 700 and, you know, 700 points or more, just by the very nature of the 600 you get from the PNPs. So, So that is that's kind of the world that we're in right now. And as always, we're going to open this up for more questions. I see Jacob here says he's awaiting a citizenship course DIY. And Jacob, that is actually on the radar, and that's a good segue into the Canadian Immigration Institute. And today's the last day of the live sessions that I'm doing for this recent round of Express Entry courses that we've created here. And the next one that's coming up is going to be spousal sponsorship. So if anyone knows someone who's looking to sponsor a spouse, or maybe you yourself have landed in Canada, which there's a lot of these, Alicia, and you came through Express Entry but listed your spouse as non-accompanying, and now you're thinking about sponsoring them, this course is the perfect solution for you, where you can get the insight on filing both electronically, online, or via paper, and then a series of 5 master classes with me for an hour each evening. Now, we've shifted it slightly, Alicia, from 4 to 5 p.m., just because Mark needs to enjoy the sun while it's out in the warm weather. So we're gonna do that. So.
And that's a good point, Mark. I have had a few consults recently with people who are in the process of FSW. And so they're the people who filed a while ago. They've got their EAPR, but they're in the backlog. And so it's taking more than 20 months for their applications to get processed. And in the meantime, they've had a relationship, it's been ongoing. They're trying to think, well, do we add the spouse to the existing application, or do we just decide, under common law, do we just decide to get married? Do we do a spousal? So it is really important to make sure that people are getting the advice that they need to understand what's strategically the best way forward for them.
Yeah.
Make sure there's no misrep, right? Make sure that if they did have a common law spouse that they didn't declare, that needs to get fixed before anything else proceeds with the application. So making sure that you're choosing the right application category, because there's risks in doing those spousal applications if you haven't properly declared a spouse in the past under common law circumstances.
Yeah. And I know for me lately, I'm also getting a lot of consultations for people who are getting their ADRs, their additional document requests, their updates on their Express Entry applications. They've been sitting in the queue for a long time. Now they're finally finalizing. And, there's about 40,000, I think, left in the queue that the minister's trying to push out and get approved before the July, reinitiation of those rounds of invitations. And those things are landmines, despite what people may think to the contrary. When they're asking you to resubmit everything that you've submitted in your EAPR in that background declaration form, absent travel history, because often they don't ask for that, you have to be super careful that you're consistent. And in some cases, it's actually a really, really good opportunity to fix something if you know you made a mistake before they start to look at things and it results in a procedural fairness letter, which is much different than an ADR. Really, when you think about a procedural fairness letter, they're saying, hey, we think you're offside, and we formulated our mind around the view that we think your situation is at, versus an additional document request where you can tell them what you want them to think, or at least frame the paradigm that an officer is viewing the application through. And so, it's a really unique opportunity. And so I do that a lot. I just filed an ADR with a client just this morning. We completed it and submitted it. And one thing I don't think, if people watch, I wasn't going to do this, because after you've already filed the application, you're kind of been on your own the whole time. And I'm trying to balance the best use of our time, but I'm going to do a video, a short little one, probably about 5 to 10 minutes, on just the main areas and problems that people run into when they're responding, because I know I've done a little search and people are all over the map, Alicia, with how to complete the background declaration. And it's a mess. And there's a lot of misinformation out there on what you should state and how you should include the information. And not everybody knows how to go back and look at your EAPR. So I'm also going to do within this video, which if I have time today, I'm going to do it. I'll also show you how to go back and look at your EAPR. It's time now. I didn't want to share it because I didn't want immigration to realize and block this somehow, this ability for people to go back and look. But without having that reference point, if you didn't take screenshots, you're going to be in a situation where you're just guessing. You can't remember exactly what the date you put for that previous address that you had 8 years ago. So,
Yeah.
so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's been something that's been coming up for people as well, right? They don't remember what date they put on there, and they didn't happen to take screenshots of the applications. So
Yeah. And people's lives have evolved and changed. And one of the things you have to watch for too is if you've moved to a different country and if you've been there for at least 6 months, that can trigger the need for a police certificate. But even in those requests, Alicia, we're saying that they're not saying, only provide police certificates from the places where the police certificates have expired. They're just opening it up and saying, provide updated police certificates. So we're advising our clients to go and get new ones, even though technically those original police certificates, if you've never returned back to the country and you obtained them after you left, they're technically still valid. So we're experimenting a little bit with that, but that's something that you have to be aware of. And even within the program delivery instructions, it states that an officer can always come back and ask for new ones at any time, any new document. So people are being a little, you have to be careful, and no one's talking about that.
the other risk too on staying in a country for more than 6 months is sometimes that country is on the designated countries list because it might happen to have a higher incidence of TB, for example. And then you've got to go get an updated immigration medical because you've been in that country. So
yeah. And we're also seeing in those ADRs, they don't mention medical, but there's another request that often comes before that is, this specific 1017 form and instructions to go get the medical. So sometimes you have to be careful and watch your My CIC account, the correspondence section, and just make sure that you don't have two requests there that came, almost on the same day or one day just before. So. So there you go. There's our helpful information and a little bit of some tips and insights. So stay tuned, and we'll get that ADR video released. Okay, let's jump in. Here's the first question, and this let's see if we can make sense of this one. So, united by food, nice. I love that. That's a great one. So I have 1.5 years of experience in Category B and NOC B, and 2 years experience in Category C. Can I add Category C or NOC C as secondary and mention more than 3 years of experience to get maximum points?
nope. No, you cannot. NOC C category work does not qualify as skilled work experience for the purpose of CEC or FSW applications. So when you're looking at express entry, if you're looking at FSW or CEC, then it has to be category NOC A, B, or 0. And anything in category C does not count for work experience points. You have to put it in your personal history when you're going through your EAPR and declaring what you've been doing with your life, but it's not going to give you points for your work history experience.
All right, next question is from Muhammad, and Muhammad says, should we be worried if there is review required for our eligibility in the express entry PR application? Other criteria like criminality, medical info, sharing, that kind of stuff is already passed. So how do you feel about that, Alicia?
Yeah, and this might be one of the ones where we ding the gong and say, maybe there's a specific consultation required, because it really depends on what's on that. I'm assuming that you've gone and you've looked for the GCMS notes and it says review required as part of those GCMS notes. GCMS notes tend to be somewhere between 40 to 100 and some pages long, and it's important for us to understand the context of the application. And, maybe there is an area where something that you've said in your application is triggering an officer to say, I'm not sure. I want to drill down and get some more information or review this person's file more carefully. And if that's the case, then you probably should talk to somebody about it. Um, we can't say what might be the concern without getting more information, but review required normally means there's something that's
Yes.
tweaking their interest.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that you do not want to take lightly. I have had a number of consultations where people come back to me after they get the procedural fairness letter. And when you found this, like Alicia said, whatever, I'm assuming like it's come through an ATIP or GCMS notes and you've seen review required. there's often ways that you can kind of identify to some extent within the notes, but more often you actually need to go back, dive into everything from, it's very frequently reference letters, things like that, work history, that tends to be the problem. And to really get to the root of it, we need to go all the way back, look at what you put in the application itself in your work history, compare that to the supporting documents that you included, your reference letters, pay slips, whatever you might have had, because they don't just do a review unless there's a reason to do it. And when they come back, like I said, and send a procedural fairness letter, then they're driving this ship. They've already framed what they have a suspicion, they've already started to formalize in their mind what they think the answer is going to be. And then they're giving you a chance to try to change it. Well, the goal is to not, to actually beat them to the punch and say, oh, hey, I see there might be an issue with this, and then preempt it and send in an update before they even get to that stage saying, hey, you might have a question about this potentially, at least that's what I see in the notes. So here's the answer before you even send me the PFL. And I've had a lot of success over the years taking it proactively. So that is one of the approaches that we take. Okay. All right. So this one's a little bit tricky. This is from Yash, and Yash says, requested an extension of my postgrad work permit because it was not a full length as my study duration. Okay. I'm not sure if this was because of a passport, maybe, Alicia, that was short, but they should have given it for, 1 year is only going to get you 1 year. 18 months school is only going to get you 18 months. 2 years of study is going to get you 3 years. So he says, if request is rejected, which there's probably more to, more here than meets the eye. If it's rejected, can I apply under the new policy of work permit 18-month extension? We'll leave it at that, Alicia. Alicia has her own view on referring it to as an extension. It's a new work permit, but we'll leave it at that. And it says, the postgrad work permit expiration is April 2022.
So Yash, I mean, I would need to get more information from you to be able to understand what happened here. But sometimes what happens is people have a passport that's expiring and therefore their study permit was only issued for part of the time and they have to get their study permit extended. But you're saying you've got your PGWP wasn't issued for the full length of your study duration. And I'm not sure why. So maybe it was that your passport was expiring during the time of your PGWP and you had to do a recapture of time on that postgrad work permit. Sometimes it can get really complex because some people will do what's called stacking education programs. So they will do one program of, let's say, a year, and then right away they'll roll over into a second 1 year program. And if you are able to do that within a 2-year period, if you can get 2 qualifying 1 year postgrad eligible work permit or study permit programs and stack them together within a 2-year time period, sometimes people wait and then make sure that they've completed that second period of studies and then apply for the postgrad work permit. And it could be that there's something unique about your circumstances that's going on here. So it would require a little bit more information. If you are on implied status, then you have to hope that you've put everything in that initial PGWP recapture of time application to satisfy the officer that you're eligible. And if it's refused, then you lose your implied status. So as soon as there's a rejection, you no longer have implied status. The next question is, well, what happens? Your PGWP is going to expire this month, or it may have already expired. I don't know. You said April of 2022. It's, there's only a couple days.
Today.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a situation where you're outside of status, right? Where you have expired. You are eligible to apply for restoration, but only within 90 days. And we don't know exactly when this summer program on the new 18-month public policy is actually going to be live, right? They said summer of 2022, and it'll be for people who had a postgrad work permit that was expiring sometime between January and December of 2022. So this is a bit of a tricky situation, Yash.
Yeah. And this one kind of flows from it. So this is from MI, and MI says, "Hi, Mark. For us who are temporary out of work, waiting our restoration of status, can we get back to work? Does the new policy address our situation as regards to getting back to work?" So I think this is just someone who's, maybe they've got a new LMIA supporting the work permit. Their previous one expired. They've applied to restore. They're not working. Does the new policy affect that situation in any way?
So you've got to be really careful. I had another former client reach out to me about this as well because they saw the notice and they're saying, oh, great, well, can I work as a visitor? And the answer is this is not changing the eligibility for the programs. It's only if your employer has an LMIA or an LMIA exemption where they're able to do an offer of employment through the employer portal, that if you have one of those things, an LMIA from your employer or an offer of employment supported by an A number through the employer portal, then you can apply for the work permit as part of this extended temporary public policy as a visitor from within Canada. You normally can't do that. But this does not allow you to work in the interim unless you do have an LMIA from your employer or an offer of employer employment under one of the international mobility programs with that A number. So be really, really careful. The rule is always that you cannot work under any changed conditions for a new employer or a different occupation or a different location or a different wage rate unless you actually have that new work permit issued to you in hand. So implied status is only when you have submitted that application before your original document expired. But if you're in restoration of status, that means that it already has expired and you cannot work unless and until you get a new LMIA, new employer offer, and then you have to submit the work permit and do a specific request for a public policy interim authorization to work. So it's fairly complicated.
All right, let's go to our first super chat. So this is Manvinderjeet, who says, "Alicia and Mark, keep up the good work. Thank you very much. For a study permit extension, how much funds should I show? Only the full fee or fee and living expenses? How much living expenses should I show for 8 months?"
Mhm. And this is a good question, and we've gone to this webpage before, but IRCC, when you look at the program instruction requirements or manual for officers for study permits, they actually do give a breakdown on required funds for study permits. And so depending on the length of the program, you normally have to show that you are able to pay the full tuition fee and living expenses, but it also depends on how many people you're trying to include in your application. So if assuming it's just you, that you don't have any spouse and there's no children involved, then you have to show that you're able to support yourself in Canada for the full duration. Now, I am a bit worried if you say 8 months because, if you're only doing a study permit program for 8 months, that's going to give you extremely limited options in terms of what your postgrad work permit eligibility is afterwards.
I'm wondering if this is just with respect to extending from within Canada. So the
Mm,
first study permit's already been issued, and now they're applying to extend the study permit because of the program. And
yeah.
they probably maybe need another 8 months just to complete it. So how would that change, within the form? We've got the amount of funds you have available, and Alicia was referring back here. So this is financial sufficiency, and this is some of the instructions that we have when it comes to applying for the original work permit. But the principles still apply to some extent. Sorry, the original study permit. The principles still apply to some extent for people that are extending. But but do you have what are your thoughts on that for people who are just applying to extend?
So be careful if you're applying to extend because you haven't finished the first program, is one thing that I would say. So I have seen people who weren't able to complete their initial program within the first authorized study permit, and then they had to go on part-time status, and then they're trying to extend because they're trying to finish that program. If you're in that situation, that can be really, really dangerous, because if you have gone to anything other than full-time status as an active student, you might be in breach of your study permit conditions. But assuming that's not the case, and you finished one program and you're looking at doing another and you're stacking your applications, then yeah, show that you can pay the full fee for whatever that new 8-month program is and your living expenses. So they normally say $10,000 per year. So I guess you could try to prorate it, but I would suggest to err on the side of having more money rather than less, to show that you can cover fully your living expenses for that program.
And it's another thing, it's interesting, Alicia, because there is vast amounts of discretion in terms of what officers are looking for. And I can guarantee that someone out there will say, oh, you don't really need to worry so much about funds because you're already in Canada and they know you're good. And I'll bet you any money someone has put relatively low funds, provided a part-time employer letter or something like that, and got through. But as I indicated yesterday in my live, we at Holthe Immigration Law do not deal in probabilities. We deal in possibilities. And if there is one officer out there that is going to take a strict approach to the assessment of the application and say, I don't think you have enough funds, and refuse it, then we are not going to advise you to do that. So the advice that you're going to get here is going to be advice that's designed to keep you safe, not walk along the ledge, of this cliff that some people like to walk along. It reminds me of this story, Alicia. I can't help myself because this is a story that I can't remember who told me, but it was about, no, do you know what? It was House on the Prairie. I don't know if you ever watched House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie?
Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, I loved Little House on the Prairie.
It was this old show. And basically there was like this competition to get a contract to take the wagons and haul these goods from one place to another. And Charles and his friend were doing it, and these other guys were doing it. And so they had all of their stuff loaded up in the wagons, and then they were off and they were racing. And when they were racing, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but essentially the one guys, they were just driving the horses so fast and right near the edge of the cliff. And, the wagon wheels were just hanging off kind of the back of the, this narrow pass they had to go through. And Charles and his, I don't know who his neighbor was, they saw them pass. They knew they couldn't catch up. So they just took the slow, safe way there. And the other guys were right on the edge, pushing the envelope. And then when they got to the end result, they were actually carrying fine china. So plates and cups and everything. So the other guys who were pushing it and getting right near the edge and pushing their horses to the limit, all of the stuff that they were supposed to carry was all broken and smashed. And so Charles and his buddy got the they got the contract because they took the safe route. So there's a little teaching moment for all of you, a little lesson. So if you have a choice between racing your horse and taking your wagon that doesn't have a lot of suspension in it, play it safe and just go slow for the sake of the horses as well.
Yeah.
There we go.
Make sure that you pass the finish line with all the goods intact.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's see if we can find here. We've got a little bit of a follow-up here. I'm just trying to pull up. When you guys do your super chats, make sure that you include it. So I can see MI, you're going to have to give me the rest of your question here. Oh no, I'm just. Here we go. oh no, I'm just applying for what is left of my postgrad work permit. But I was a bit late in putting in my application. Technically, my 3 years is already approved. My passport just could not accommodate it at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So
that's
there
the
we go.
recapture of time application. And yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Okay. All right. Oh, where was it? I just saw a good one here now. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is the hard part sometimes when I'm scrolling through here and I'm jumping back and forth between the super chats. Let's see here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. It's from Monsoon. Oh, this is it. Let's see. Is that going to work? Oh, maybe not. Oh, I was hoping I had it. Maybe it's just loading up. Okay, anyways, I had this spectacular fire thing because Monsoon says, I got my PR today. Thanks, Mark. I owe it to you, man. How do I get my sister? I'll defer this one to Alicia. How do I get my sister here? She is not an orphan and does not fall into any other categories for sponsorship. She is disabled, though.
These are tough. Yeah, these are tough, Monsoon. It's probably going to require a consult to see if there is any sort of category that she would be eligible for. So generally, you cannot sponsor siblings unless that sibling is under the age of 18 and is orphaned, meaning both of your legal parents have died and there's death certificates for both of the parents. Um, Disability itself doesn't necessarily result in dependency, but even then, if it was something that would result in her being considered a dependent of your parents or her parents as well, um, her parents would have to qualify for permanent residence and include her in their application. So this is a tricky
There
one,
it
but we
is.
are very glad you got your PR.
Yes, there's the fire. There's the fire. Okay, awesome. All right, let's jump to another one here. So this one is from Sneha. And Sneha says, can I combine experience in 3 job NOC-Bs for CEC, the Canadian Experience class?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And, we can always pop over to the minimum eligibility requirements for Canadian Experience class under federal skilled or under Express Entry, which is different than the federal skilled worker minimum eligibility requirements. So, yeah, here we go. Mark's pulling it up. So, we've got to meet a few things, and they're looking at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada. So, you've got to look at the job in Canada. They look at the 3 years before your application date. So, yes, you can combine different types of job experience, but overall, within this 3 year period, you have to have at least 52 weeks within a 24-month period. So this is equal amount in part-time work. So that second bullet point, if you've been working, and we're always conservative, so let's say you're working 17 hours, we say don't claim those extra 2 hours, just count it as a half of a week or 15 hours. If you're doing that for 24 months, then that could also equal 1 full time of work experience. And you can combine different jobs, but the problem is you can't claim more than 30 hours per week in any given week. So let's say you're working 2 jobs concurrently and they're both 18 hours, you're capped at a 30-hour maximum for that whole week. You can't carry over or tack on those extra hours. The other thing is you've got to pick what your primary occupation is. And so out of all that, you've got to make sure that you have picked one national occupation classification code to be your primary occupation.
Yeah. And that really, I've had people ask me, well, which code do I use? Well, it really doesn't matter for the purposes of the Canadian Experience class, except where it would apply to, say, eligibility if you wanted to have the chance of maybe getting pulled from a provincial nominee program. Maybe you've got previous history in that knock. So that's one of the factors that can play a role. But ultimately, it's not a big deal. Now, I want to pull this up here. So this is once again where Alicia and I are driving our wagon in a nice managed process, staying away from the ledge, the cliff. And you can see here, and lots of people read this, I see it all the time. They say, for part-time work, you can mark more or less than 15 hours as long as it adds up to 1,560 hours. You can work more than one part-time job to get the hours you need to apply. So technically, some people take this and they count it all up and they add everything up in the course of 12 months and they say totaling 1,560 hours. I had 10 here. I had, 29 here, whatever it might be. Technically, that may be possible. But we, Alicia and I, are very conservative, and we want to make sure that it's easy for an officer to make that assessment. And if you are, if the difference is waiting another month and working another month, we will encourage you to do that, then pushing that envelope and going right up against that. But one thing is for certain, you can't work 1,560 hours in in an 11-month period and then expect to be able to qualify. And there are advantages for sure to CEC as well, because it doesn't need to be in the same knock code, and it's pretty flexible, as you can see, with how you're accumulating it. But it all needs to be skilled, knock B, A, or 0 skill level.
Mhm. And you do have to pick one as your primary occupation.
You do. So you do absolutely have to pick one. Okay, let's see who's next here as we're zipping through our questions. Spider-Man saying hi from Lachute. Do you know where is it? Do you, Alicia? Know where Lachute is?
Lachute, I'd say. I mean, it sounds
Lachute?
French, but I don't know where it is.
Okay, we're gonna go with here. There you go. How about in Quebec? It's apparently a small, let's move this over here. Is a town in southwest Quebec. There you go. 62 kilometers northwest of Montreal. There you go. Oh, the things people post. We're equal opportunity, though. We're equal opportunity. Okay, let's see what's next here. Okay, so here's one, Alicia, we get a lot. This is, I'll pull it from Facebook. This is a big one. Oh, we'll just leave it like that. What about the caregiver application? We're waiting for so long. Any thoughts on this gong show, Alicia?
I mean, the one thing that was posted on the listserv was they actually did update the program manual instructions, right? So the ministerial instructions are saying for sure people from outside Canada cannot apply for caregiver applications from outside Canada anymore, right? You've got to be under one of the programs. There were basically 3 incarnations over the years of these various different caregiver pathways. It can get super complex and they overlap, and some people were changing status from one to the other, and at a certain point you could get credit for that. But what's resulted is kind of a mess, and there's huge backlogs in processing time for these types of applications under the caregiver categories. And I don't know if it's going to get fixed anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. Okay, let's slide over to LinkedIn now, and we'll pull a question up from Chitan. He says, is there a separate option for lawyers to get GCMS notes within 24 hours?
I wish.
I do too. I wish that was the case, Chetan. I wish it was.
No, there is not a separate option for lawyers to get any sort of expedited GCMS notes within 24 hours. So it's the same process for everybody. You go on to the IRCC or requesting the access to information and privacy. You're going to drop down to say IRCC or CBSA or maybe both, depending on what's going on for the file. And you might have to do those 2 separate requests if you need information from both CBSA and IRCC. And they're going to process within their processing standard. And sometimes you'll get a letter back saying, we've exceeded our 30 days. Now we're going to be 45 days. And then you'll get another letter saying, we've exceeded our 45 days. There's some reason it's got to be even longer than that. So,
yeah. Okay, next, another one from LinkedIn. Duke says, when a client applied for express entry without his or her spouse, could he apply with his or her minor children? So this is the whole minor children and spouse listed as probably non-accompanying.
yeah. And so these also can get very problematic depending on what the custody issues and divorce situation, or if it isn't a legal marriage and it was a common law relationship. Are there other sort of parenting orders or any sort of documentation from the foreign court that talks about who has care of the children, who has visitation of the children? In most circumstances, people are not allowed to leave their country with their kids if they are a single parent and the other parent is still living, because Canada needs to make sure that we're a signatory to the International Hague Convention against Child Abduction, and we need to make sure that there has been proper permission by the other parent, and usually by a court, to grant somebody the authority to come to Canada and to immigrate with their children. So yes, you can apply, but you're going to have to prove how you have authority to be able to remove those kids from the jurisdiction.
Excellent. Okay, let's slide over to Facebook here on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. This is an interesting question. So, hi, Mark. Thanks for your help. I got my COPR being a principal applicant. Can I leave my dependents at my relative in Ontario and go to the other province, Saskatchewan, alone, which invited me, and I invite them later on when all things are settled?
Well, and these are always very case dependent situations, and so I can't give specific advice. If you definitely want to talk about it, then we sure can via consult. But in general, in terms of immigration information, it is always very, very important that you are doing what you said you would do when you got your nomination through the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. And one of the things is that you prove an intent to reside in the province that's nominated you, because you have to follow through and make good on your promise to live in Saskatchewan. And depending on what's happening, maybe your dependents have some sort of reason where they're getting cared for by family members, or you've got a small baby or something like that. And you're going to want to justify your plan, right? So prove that they are coming, have them in fact join you, have a set plan for what sort of living accommodations you're getting, how you're finding a job and being able to support yourself in Saskatchewan. But be really careful to make sure that you follow through on what you've promised to the SINP.
All right. This is from Sajad, a graduate of the Express Entry DIY Masterclass. Sajad says, hey, Mark and Alicia, I applied for CIC Inland May 2021, got a request letter in February 2022, but haven't heard anything since. Is that normal?
So Sajad, I hope you responded to that request letter in February 2022. I assume that you have. But yeah, if you just responded in February and they haven't come back to you yet, I don't think that's out of the ordinary.
No, I don't have any reason to believe that that's anything that should be concerned. Mm-mm. Okay, let's see here. Next one. Okay, so Ida says, thanks for your amazing YouTube channel. Thank you, Ida. May I ask you to send official letter to Prime Minister to consider students with expired postgrad work permits on December 2021 and January 2022 for this new extension pathway?
It's so hard. I mean, I had another person who has a consult as well, and they said, my document on the PGWP is expiring January 7th, 2023. I'm not part of the public policy, right? What's going to happen for those people? And I mean, we can write letters, we can try to advocate. Unfortunately, my view is that the federal government's going to say, we picked these dates. Those are the dates we picked. Those are the people we're going to save. And they may or may not extend that in the future, but they probably won't go back to the past. Mind you, maybe there's time to try to influence them because this isn't written in stone until they actually put out the policy. They said sometime in the summer of 2022.
Yeah. I am far less optimistic about immigration doing anything about this. The reality is there are far, far more international students who then become postgrad work permit holders than there are spaces to transition to PR. So in those circumstances, there's going to be some winners, people that are fortunate and benefit from these one-time programs, and there's going to be some people that aren't. And, Ida, it's heartbreaking. And we wish that there was, a clear pathway forward for everybody, but it's simply not going to be the case. And so the government decides where they're going to draw the line, knowing that it's not going to benefit everybody, but they do what they feel is necessary to try to benefit the most number of people. And there are some people that are going to fall by the wayside. And all I can do right now is just ring the bell for you, Ida, and say, look, slide over and book a consult, and we can look at your situation and see if there's anything that can be done. Okay, and then I'm going to pull up the next one. This one's from Nimish, and it's the same type of question as we just answered before. Is it really taking this long? In this case, the everything he said indicated was passed on March 18th. Well, if there's silence, Nimish, on your application since you responded March 18th, And we've already got a previous one in February. Trust me, it's all over the map. And this is not to be, it's not something to be concerned about from the standpoint that you're doing anything wrong. Processing times are just, they're unpredictable, and everyone is not going to be receiving the same treatment, I guess is the best way to describe it. Okay, this one is from Miss R. And the question is, hi, do we need to inform IRCC if we open a mobile application savings account connected to the main bank account for which we provided the statement and letter to IRCC after EAPR is filed? So you got an answer for that one, Alicia? I don't think they care, but maybe I'm
I mean,
missing something.
as long as those funds are still like, so for federal skilled worker, you have to prove that you have settlement funds, and those settlement funds have to meet the minimum requirement for the number of applicants that you included in your application. Those funds can't drop below the minimum requirement. And as long as you're not pulling out extra money through that mobile app or, somehow siphoning off some of those funds from the savings account, hopefully that's not going to change anything. Make sure to check the exchange rates though, right? Depending on what sort of currency you've got that account in. If you're doing anything funny with different currency or a different USD account or something like that, you have to make sure those exchange rates don't fluctuate and make sure that the balance doesn't go below the minimum equivalent Canadian dollars.
Okay, this question is from Hina, and it's an interesting one. It's actually about our consult booking process. May I know about timing being mentioned on the calendar for appointment? Is that according to Canadian time or else? Because I tried to set time zone, but that couldn't work. Guide me, please. So it's in Mountain Time, so Mountain Daylight or Mountain Standard Time, whatever's applicable. When you go to the site and you click 25-minute consultation, and what, Alicia, you have no availability in April? Well, we're at the end of April. We'll give her a break. So if we go to May and then we go to Wednesday, these times are Mountain Time. And that's actually a good point, Alicia. We should maybe over here just make a note that these are that the timing is Mountain Time. But when you scroll down here at the bottom, you'll see that there is an ability to shift the time zone. So I'm not sure if it's not displaying on your website, like on the web browser that you're using, but you should be able to change your time to wherever, if you're in Antarctica, I love that. You click here, it will then redesignate, or it should, no available times. Let's see here. You should be able to see the times based on whatever time zone you choose down here. So, yeah, so it shouldn't be like, here for us, we're Mountain Standard Time, which is kind of like Edmonton time, which is our kind of our time zone here. But yeah, there shouldn't be an issue. But if you are having any issues booking a consult, don't hesitate to send an email to info@holthylaw.com. And let me just see if I can scroll down to the bottom here. See if we have it. I don't see it here. Just 1 second here. Actually, I'm just going to pull it up unless you have any other thoughts on that, Alicia.
No, yeah, just pick the time zone that you need so that it displays it correctly for you. And yeah, it might be that the default is showing in Mountain Standard Time.
Yeah, and you can just send an email to info@holthylaw.com. And we can, and Prem will connect with you and he'll be able to set you up so everything is good. Okay, next question. This is another super from Tushant. It says, been 5 months, I linked my file under the TR to PR International Grad on GCMS notes. It shows review required. Submitted an explanation letter 3 months ago, but eligibility and security, when can I expect eligibility to start?
Uh-oh. Yeah, so Tishant, I mean, I don't know what the issue is, right? It review required. I'm not sure what sort of explanation you submitted or what concerns you're trying to address with respect to your application. Some of these are taking a really long time. So when they published their processing standards and kind of their snapshot of how many applications they're going to get finalized in 2022, not even all of them are going to get processed for 2022. Some of those international grad TR to PR are scheduled to not even get finalized until 2023.
Yeah. And one other thing that I'll add as well is, Tushant, if you have not received a request from IRCC on your TR to PR pathway, the web form still doesn't allow people to, if I type in here, it still doesn't allow you to upload explanations there. And they may not very well have even received what you've asked for. So if we go here and we choose a permanent residence applied online, the only option that's still available is let me just flip my screen over here. When you go here to the web form, IRCC web form, and this is where you would probably update your information. If you choose permanent residence applied online and then you select, express entry is still the only one there. So there isn't really a way that you can confirm that whatever response you've given is actually going to get to them. So you have to be really, really careful and understand that the moment anything comes back, you're going to resend everything that you sent the first time if that was the case. But we're kind of speculating here a little bit, aren't we, Alicia? And this is what happens sometimes. There's only so much you guys can put in your comments, and often we need a whole lot more explanation and background to understand, because maybe it's just in the queue and it's just set aside. And like Alicia said here, if we flip over to the levels plans, you can see here that for 2022, they're expecting to do about 40,000. This is this category right here. And then the remaining 32 in 2023, although they do have room to do more. So there is a little bit of a higher mark here that they could, a high range. But yeah, it's processing times for TR to PR pathway. In my last meeting, well, no, it was a couple months back now, we brought this up and they said, look, because we asked what the processing times were, and they said, we don't have processing times. We'll get to it when we get to it, essentially, which isn't very helpful, is it?
Yeah, but Tushant, be really careful, right? Like, please book a consult if you've got concerns that you haven't addressed something and you think there's something that's offside about your application, because we'd really like to try to talk to you about it while it's possible to be saved, right? I just had a consult
Yep.
with somebody who they were under the previous program. They had done their own PGWP applications. Everything went fine. They tried to do their CEC application. They had a draw under one of the last draws last fall, and they got their ITA. They submitted their express entry under CEC. And you know what? They forgot to submit their certificate of completion of their course. They'd submitted a letter from the school and they submitted their transcripts. But immigration's ruthless, and they said, too bad, your express entry application is refused because you didn't submit that school certificate or the diploma. And, they didn't try to reconsider. They didn't do anything about it. And now there's no way that that score that was okay back in 2021, it's probably not likely going to be okay now. So, if there is a way to try to save that application, then make sure that you do that ahead of time.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason that we created, courses like the Express Entry Step-by-Step course. We know that legal fees are not cheap. And, our model is very, very direct between the lawyer and the client. So Alicia and I, we work directly with you. There's no one in between that's feeding information or collecting your documents or filling stuff for you. We work directly with you. And there's a cost to that higher level of service, and we feel a whole lot more confident when we work directly with you through our collaborative review process. But one of the ways that we've also tried to share our knowledge and our understanding and our experience and to help you avoid those costly mistakes is through the Express Entry course and the masterclass that comes with it. And, I will plug this, Alicia, till, as we say here in Southern Alberta, till the cows come home, because this course is absolutely full of everything. And if you are a DIYer at heart, I know you're going to go online. You're going to look at 500 other Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups. You're going to ask all these questions in forums and stuff. Why in the world are you wasting your time doing that? You can subscribe to this course, and we're probably going to launch one next month again. But if you look here, we cover every single aspect. There's over 642 minutes of premium video content. And then on top of that, you get 5 hours directly with me, just like this, for the people that are in the group. And I've got, like I said, I've got this course is going on right now, and it's phenomenal. The group is awesome. And when you come out of it, you not only learn from your own questions, but you learn from the other people who are asking questions that you didn't even think to ask. And often, Alicia, the last little piece, I guess, that I'll point out is that you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And when you're reading and you're trying to follow the instructions of immigration, often we find people, they do everything that they believe is correct. And how they interpret sometimes what the instructions are from immigration can be just a little bit off, and it can make all the difference in the world negatively. So that's why we created the master classes, so we can workshop you guys and help more people at once. But in the end, we believe that that's even better than a traditional representation situation where you don't even have contact with the person who's representing you. You're dealing with some middle person. So our collaborative reviews and all of that is available for help.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Mark was just saying there. I had another instance where somebody they'd retained us, and part of what you get when you retain us is access to the course, because that really helps people understand what they need to prepare. And in this case, I had grilled the person, but when they looked at your course, they said, "Oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize that meant that. And could we actually have a problem here?" And so we had to have a big conversation, and we've got to do some more figuring out if there is a problem.
Yeah.
But sometimes people need to hear things a few different ways before they actually understand that, wait a second, that problem could apply to their situation. And so that course goes through a lot of those very specific circumstances where you really need to watch out.
Yeah. And the stakes have never been higher. Never. Even a couple years ago, even before the pandemic, the draws and the rounds of invitations, it was a little sketchy, but if you didn't get drawn this time, there was a chance that you could save it and get another ITA. But the way the scores have been going up and up and up, boy, if you get an ITA, you have no luxury of getting that thing returned. You have to get it right the first time. And that's what we're trying to help people with. So, so watch. If you haven't had a chance to slide over, make sure that you watch for the next course and that you subscribe and take it. And I'm not sure if we have any of our current students here, but there's been a lot of past ones that have gone through that are still showing up and saying hi. And it's just, I love doing it. Okay, Manvinderjeet has a few little follow-up pieces here. So one of two. So following my earlier chat, for 1 year study permit extension, yes, and I think that was 8-month one maybe. Yes, this will be my second program, starts in September 2022. The first completes the end of May. When should I apply for a study permit extension? After I get a completion notification for my first course or earlier?
So, Manvinderjit, be really careful, because you can't have a break in your studies, and you have to complete both of those programs within a 2-year time period in order for it to qualify for a full 2 years. And maybe you're not going for the full 2 years. Maybe you're just going for, the 1 year plus a little bit more time. But if you apply for the postgrad work permit after the first program of studies, you're only going to get that postgrad work permit for the length of your first program of studies. So if the first program was 1 year, you're only getting a postgrad work permit for 1 year. So if you want to try to stack those programs, go to the program instructions on PGWP validity, and that's where you're going to want to carefully take a look at that program, make sure that it's eligible in and of itself for PGWP. So both programs have to be eligible for PGWP. Both of them have to be 8 months or longer in duration. And then you would apply after the second period of studies is completed for the PGWP and hope to stack both those programs. But you have to make sure you're eligible and that you're looking at the validity time without having a break in those studies.
Yeah. And these questions are super, super volatile, I guess is the best way to describe it. Because if you get it wrong, you misinterpret, you're not 100% certain, and then you move forward, there's very, very few opportunities to backtrack and fix it. And that's why we keep harping over and over on the importance of booking a consultation, because that short little 25-minute consultation can make all the difference in the world, and you can go forward with confidence versus uncertainty. So we'd encourage you to slide over. Okay, next question is from Michael. Michael says, is it allowed to apply for an Outland spousal sponsorship, so an FC1 and FSW at the same time? And then I'll just finish up. Looks like we got a second part. Are there plans for a special TRV for Outland principal applicants?
Yeah, and this is getting back to the whole, the minister had promised that for
Mm-hmm.
spousals, there would be some sort of spousal TRV that would happen. And so far, we haven't seen anything. So, this might be something where they roll it out in December of 2022. We don't know. So hopefully there will be. They have said that there will be, but they have given zero follow-up or specifics about what that program will look like. To answer your first question, is it possible to do a federal skilled worker application and to have a spousal sponsorship? Yes, it is possible. The regulations specifically say that you are not allowed to have two ongoing spousal sponsorships at the same time, but you are allowed to have two different types of PR applications. However, depending on which one gets processed first, they're going to make you choose at a certain point
Yeah.
which one to continue with.
Yeah. So I'm just going to flip back here to Tashant. So Tashant had asked about, the linking TR to PR and then the review required. And the follow-up here from Tashant was that it was about either a fee issue. And you'll remember, Alicia, when people were filing the TR to PR pathway, that the fee payment thing had a period where it collapsed. There was so many applicants and there was an issue. So it was either fees or another PR file. Well, Tushant, our advice hasn't really changed much. At the end of the day, it could be a number of things. And one of the things that we do is we go back through all of the application material of our clients when they retain us, when we have these review required things, because sometimes it's not apparent. We will go back and we will review everything forensically. And often we can identify, oh, there's the problem. And then we can proactively sort it out, because it will, yes, be either a fee issue or another PR file, so we will be able to figure that out, but it's through a consult that we can sort that out for you. Okay, and then we have one, we'll do one more after this and then we'll wrap it up. So MI says, can I apply for PR as separated? So this is the continuation of, I've got no kids. Secondly, as regards my previous question, am I allowed to work given my situation? So let's flip back here to the previous question. And boy, you're making things tricky here for us, MI. Let's just get a little review of the previous question. So the question is about marital status. Wow, this is tricky. I'm not sure. Okay, I think this one was the restoration. For us who are temporary out of work awaiting our restoration status, can we get back to work? Does new policy address? Okay, not that one. Boy, MI, you might need to repost your question because I'm not sure exactly which one you're referencing. Restoration. Ooh, there's a lot of questions. This one was about marital status. MI did a super chat, so I'm working here. You guys need to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, let's try this one. Oh no, I'm just applying for what is left. Okay, so we already covered that one. Oh my goodness. Okay, so in the situation I just described, Mark, can I get back to work while I wait for my extension? No, you cannot. You're in a restoration period. You can't go back to work. Not in any way. You have to wait until that work permit is received. The only way you can is if you're truly under implied or maintained status, like Alicia said, which is effectively that you have submitted your work permit extension before your current one expired. So I'm not sure. Can I apply for PR as separated? Well, yes, you can, right, Alicia? I've got no kids. Secondly, as regards my previous question, am I allowed to work given my situation? No, you're not. So
yeah. If you're in a restoration situation, you cannot work because that means that your earlier work authorization had expired and you're applying after its expiry to restore presumably within 90 days.
Okay, and the last question here, Kazeko says, hello, can restoration of status be refused if your intention is to be sponsored by a spouse and become a PR and not a temporary visitor?
Yeah, for sure it could be refused depending on what kind of status you're trying to restore to. So if you were on some sort of temporary status, like a study permit or a visitor visa or a work permit, and you're trying to restore and you don't have an underlying basis to restore, or if you've also proven that you're living with somebody who's a Canadian and you're trying to get sponsored by that person, you've got to be honest about what's happening in your life situation. And if an officer looks at that and says, well, wait a minute, they're trying to restore to some sort of temporary status, but they're also trying to do maybe a sponsorship application, but they haven't submitted that sponsorship application, the onus is on you to prove your temporary intent. It is possible to have a dual intent, but you have to prove that you have not lost your temporary intent at the same time.
Yeah. And I will tell you as well, Kazeko, that when I have individuals in this situation, obviously you're out of status, which I would have hoped that didn't happen in the first place, that you would have transitioned to visitor status if that's what was required. But generally speaking, if you get the spousal sponsorship application submitted and then apply to restore, you're going to have a whole lot more success applying to restore, say, as a visitor, when you have no evidence to show, other than you're in a relationship with a Canadian, right? That you're actually are eligible to submit it. And so they tend to be relatively, facilitative when, you've got a spousal application in the queue. And there's the public policy for the spouse or common law partner class that kicks in if you are out of status for whatever reason, and you are the subject of a spouse or common law partner class application from within Canada. So there's a number of different pieces to this, but Alicia's right. There's nothing that guarantees anything. An officer has the ability to assess and make a decision based on the merits of what's been presented to them. So yeah, there's no slam dunks here, that's for sure. All right. Okay, well, we are into overtime here, so we'll wrap up with that. But we want to thank everybody who's posted questions all across our various channels. We obviously, it's impossible to get through all of the questions. And yes, it was complicated for sure, but you paid for the super chat, so I was willing to sort through it. Others of you have posted questions that we weren't able to get to. Remember, every Wednesday, 10 a.m. for me, Thursdays right here at this time, 11 a.m. for Alicia. We're here to answer your questions and do the best we can. We can't reiterate enough how much we are encouraging you guys to go ahead and book the 25-minute consults if you have specific tricky issues that you need to resolve, because that short little 25-minute consult can make all the difference in the world. And I'll tell you something, when things go south, you end up booking the consult anyways. And at that stage, very often, there's not much that we can do to fix it. So we'd by far rather give you some preventative medicine, give you your apples and fruit to eat, versus giving you your medicine after when you're already sick. So there's the analogy. So thanks so much, everybody, for connecting in. Another great live Q&A. As always, the courses are available. Go to the Canadian Immigration Institute.com site. There should be a link in the description below, and register for the next upcoming classes. The next one that we have coming up is the spousal sponsorship course. That is May 9th to the 13th. So anyone who fits into that category, I'd love for you to join me. And we are just wrapping up the express entry as well. And so stay tuned, that will come. But we also have other offerings, Canada, Ukraine, the LMIA course. I'm just about ready to launch the PR card renewal, and we've got plans for a bunch of new ones as well. Thanks so much, Alicia. Have a great Thursday afternoon, and we'll see everybody else next time. Take care.